Alright, hello and welcome back to Charlotte Street Computers. My name is Tom, and today we are looking at Mac Basics number 2. This is the first time I have done this class using Big Sur, so I'm going to be exploring this along with you. And today we're going to use the system preferences as an outline to talk about certain features. So let's head over to System Preferences, and we do that by going up to the Apple menu. I'm going to go up to the upper left, and I'm going to choose the second item down. And we're going to be spending most of our time in this first row. Now, in Big Sur, in Catalina, they moved our Apple ID information to the very top to kind of mirror what's going on with the iPhone and the iPad. And so anyway, we're going to be spending most of our time in this top row here, and I'm going to start with General. So if you want to click on General, some of the things that we're going to be looking at today are very cosmetic or just affect a very small thing. But the very first topic is something that affects many things in the system. So right now I'm in the light mode, and that's the mode that most Macs have been in for decades. A couple of years ago, they introduced a dark mode. So I'll go ahead and click that. It's a very good mode for using your computer at night because it emits a lot less light. And this is way more than just the things that you're looking at. Things that you will open later on will also be dark. So for instance, if I came down to the Pages app and opened it up, it's going to be dark as well. So all the Apple apps have been optimized for dark mode. And so you can come into the system preferences and you can manually switch between light mode and dark mode. Or if you like light mode in the daytime and dark mode at night, you can switch over to an automatic mode that will automatically switch to the dark mode when the sun goes down, and it'll switch back to the light mode when the sun comes up. So anyway, that's a nice little feature, especially if you use your computer at night in bed, for instance, so you don't want to be blasting this kind of light right before you go to sleep. The accent color that they're talking about here is the accents are what happens when you highlight over a specific item in the menus. It's also going to affect the little dots and checkboxes and things like that. So you can change that to whatever you want. And I am a little surprised that, highlight color, that's a little different. So as I'm clicking these different ones, it is changing the menus, the menu highlights, and it's also changing, obviously, the little buttons and so forth. The highlight color, this is actually when you're working in text. So I'm going to come down and I'm going to open something like either Pages or Text Edit or even Notes. We could open Notes, and I'm going to highlight some text. And so that is the highlight color. So if you choose a different color here, you come back, it's going to change to whatever color you've selected here. So anyway, the standard color for that is blue, but you get to pick what you want. This one right here, I love this little feature because this one is good for my eyes, which are not as good as they used to be. And so there's three options. It's going to be medium when you come in here by default. But what is the sidebar icon? So there's at least 4 or 5 programs that I know of that have a sidebar. And so for instance, let's open the Finder. I believe this is the sidebar in the Finder. So let's come over and just tinker with that. Go ahead and come over here and close Notes. Let's go ahead and see if this makes any change. So yeah, when I change the sidebar icon size to small, this menu got a lot smaller. Again, it's medium by default when you bought your computer. There's also a nice large size, which makes the icons larger and it also makes the text larger. So what other programs get affected by this? The Mail app is one of them. This is the sidebar in Mail. When you open up the mailbox area, let's go back over here and change that to large. You can see that getting affected. The Photos app, I particularly like this in the Photos app. So this bar on the side that will also have your albums, makes the album previews much bigger. Go ahead and click on this again. So again, contrasting what this looks like when you go down in size and even smaller. So you can see more things in the sidebar when you choose small, but they're harder to see, especially if you've got older eyes like me. The Music app has got a sidebar. So one more sidebar over here. Also the Podcast app, which was new last year in Catalina. Podcast used to be inside iTunes, and they've kind of split those things apart to make it try to make it a little bit less confusing. So let's go into the system preferences here. It's kind of move this. I'm grabbing this by the bar at the top, move it over to the side, and again we'll just change all these things. And the app does not have to be open for this to change. It just, next time you open that app, it will be the size that you chose here in the system preferences. So one of the first things I do when I'm customizing my own computer is to change the sidebar icon size to large. I believe this right here is a new box. Allow wallpaper tinting in Windows. Let me go ahead and close a few of these other windows here. These are windows that I've opened. And when I check that box, you can see that the background is becoming a little bit more white. And so what's going on, let's move this over a little bit further to the right and see if we can tell. I can't really see the changing colors coming through there, but it is definitely taking a tint from the wallpaper that's in the back. And so that's kind of a new thing. If the new thing bothers you, that's what that box is for, is so it can stop bothering you. This next little section, this goes back to Lion, macOS 10 Lion. Now we went from 10.7 to 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And then Big Sur has made the jump to 11. So 10.7 was way back there. And it was about the same time that Apple introduced the Magic Trackpad and the Magic Mouse features, where you could scroll just by moving your finger. Let's go over here to scroll. You could just move your finger or two fingers on the trackpad up and down on the pad. And somebody at Apple decided that we don't need scroll bars anymore. So they basically did away with scroll bars, except when you scroll, they appear for a split second and then they just quickly fade back into obscurity. So if you miss those, you can bring them back by coming in here to always. And you could see that as soon as I checked that little button, I got a scroll bar on the right of this part of the window, and I got a scroll bar over here. And I'm going to open the Photos app again because it's one of those apps that really needs scroll bars. So I've got a scroll bar here, and when you're in all photos, and we'll just go ahead and stretch this out. This is the scroll bar, and the little indicator inside the scroll bar basically shows you how much scrolling you have to do to get from the bottom to the top, or the top to the bottom. So in the case of this little scroll section here on the left, I don't have much scrolling to do to expose the whole sidebar. But in the case of these photos, I must have, in fact, it's telling me I have 1,300 photos. So there's a lot of scrolling that needs to be done in order to see all those photos. And of course, the next section in that system preferences, let's go back over there, is what happens when you click inside the scroll bar. So for instance, if I put my mouse inside the scroll bar here and I click, what does it do? Well, option number one was it to scroll up one screen at a time. So if I'm looking at 3 rows of photos and I click one time, it's going to jump to the next 3 rows of photos. If I come back to this and click the option to jump to the spot that's clicked, then when I come over and click, it's just going to, in this case of the Photos app, it's going to jump down hundreds of photos. Or potentially it could jump all 1,300 photos at once if you click in the bottom or click in the top. So anyway, that feature can be handy to switch over to the jump to the spot that's clicked if you're working in a long document, or if you're working in something like Photos where there's a ton of stuff. Most of the time, what I particularly like is to jump to the next page. So if you're just scrolling through looking for something, you can just quickly scan with your eyes and it'll jump to that spot. Okay. When you bought your Mac, the only browser that was installed on it was Safari. It's Apple's web browser. If you prefer another browser, you can go to Safari and download Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, and there's a handful of others. Microsoft Bing, I believe, is now available for the Microsoft Edge is now available for the Mac, and there's a number of other smaller ones. But when you're in a program, so for instance, if I'm in the Mail app and I click a link in an email, let me go ahead and go to my inbox here, and here's an email from Zoom, and it's got some links to get on their guest list for something. So I'm going to go ahead and click this link. It's opening Safari to get to that link. That's because Safari is set to be the default web browser. So whenever a web browser is needed, it's going to use Safari to do that. Now, if you have downloaded Google Chrome or Mozilla Firefox, then you can actually choose that the other browser will be the default browser. So now if I go to that same email and click the link, it's actually going to open the other browser to get to it. So anyway, this is very helpful if you prefer a different browser besides Safari, or if you've installed another browser. They usually offer to become the default browser when you first install them. So if you said yes to that, and then you later decide that you want to go back to Safari, this is where you do it. Okay, let's just closing a few things here. By the way, I'm using Big Sur version 11.2 that just came out actually today or yesterday. So if you're watching this later on in the year, we might be on 11.3 or 0.4 or 0.5. Usually it doesn't go too much further than that in the course. I think actually on Catalina we were on 10.15.7, so there were 7 updates to Catalina. There could potentially over the next 9 months be 5 more updates to Big Sur. So anyway, prefer tabs in full screen. So what is this deal about tabs? Now, you've probably gotten familiar with tabs using the internet with any of the browsers. All the browsers have had tabs for at least a decade. So if I open one website and I want to then open a second website without closing the first one, I find the little plus and I make myself a tab, and let's just open something else here. Let's go to Apple. So I've now got an Apple tab and I've got a Charlotte Street Computers tab. Well, people have grown to like tabs in browsers, so Apple is basically offering this feature in all kinds of places, including the Finder. So you can have two windows. If I go up to the File menu and click New Tab, it would potentially let me have two different places in the Finder open at the same time in different tabs. Or perhaps tabs in Pages, which is Apple's word processing. So I'm going to come down to Pages, and I'm going to open the iCloud document that, if you've ever been in my iCloud class, then you've seen this document before. And this document is not in full screen. It's in a window. So if I was to come up and click File New and start a new document, it's not going to put that in a tab because I wasn't in full screen. Now, if I was to click the green ball on this document, and we'll maybe zoom in a little bit more. All right. And then I bump my mouse to the top and click File New, and I'll choose another new document. Let's make a term paper here. This put the term paper in a separate tab from the report. So I've got these two different tabs. I'm going to slide over here, and I'm just while I'm at it, I just want to show you this little feature here. One of the features of the trackpad and the mouse is moving from one full screen place to another. And that would be under the More Gestures area. You don't have to turn this on. It's actually on by default. Swipe between full screen apps. So what I just did was I slid from the desktop over into Pages using that three-finger slide that this person is doing right here. If you have the Apple mouse, that gesture is a two-finger slide. So you just slide with two fingers on your mouse, and it will take you from one full screen app to another. All right, so that's a quick look at tabs in other apps. So again, tabs have been around for a long time in browsers, but basically you can now use tabs everywhere. If I wanted tabs to be more present, for instance, maybe I wanted it to create a new tab inside this window, I could have checked the option to always use tabs. So if I click this document and make another new Pages document now, and we'll do the Modern Report again, it put that Modern Report in a tab inside this window, even though I wasn't in full screen. All right, and I think I'm going to go back to the full screen. If you hate tabs, you can make it never do a tab. All right, this box right here, close windows when quitting an app, is very interesting. And I wouldn't have known how interesting it was. Looks like that's checked. I'm not sure if yours is checked by default or not. And I think actually the default setting is with a check, and this is the way computers have always worked. For a year or two when they first released this feature, and it was back 7 or 8 years ago, they unchecked this box by default, and it produced some results that are very interesting but confusing if you're used to the way that computers have always worked. So let me just illustrate here. Now that I've unchecked this box, I'm going to quit Pages, and it's not going to ask me about any of these things. Let's just change this to Mac Basics 1. So I've actually made a change to this template, but when I quit Pages, it didn't ask me to save the change. And it looks like let's just say I've worked for an hour and I quit Pages and it didn't ask me to save my changes. I might be, oh no, what just happened to my document? Well, it's actually keeping those. I think I created 3 documents here. So let's go ahead and open Pages again. And what I'm expecting is, yeah, it's got the 2 tabs that were in the full screen. And it's also got the 2 tabs that were in the window. So, and it saved the change, even though this is still an untitled document, it saved the change that I made. So this can be a very interesting option if you kind of hate the process of naming things and saving them in a specific place every single time you quit a program. You can uncheck that box and it will do what I just did. Now, if I click this X, it's even with that box unchecked over here, it's going to ask me what I want to do with this. So this is normally when you quit a program, it automatically closes all the tabs and the windows for you, and it forces you to give it a name and choose a place for saving it. So I don't think I need to save that one, so I'm going to go ahead and delete. Let's go ahead and check this box. And so when I quit Pages now, it should force me to make a decision about those 2 documents that are open in full screen. So even though the full screen is not present, when I quit Pages, it didn't do that. Ooh, oh, you know why? Because I didn't make any changes to those 2 documents. They were just the standard template, and I didn't touch them at all, so it's like, oh, there's nothing here to lose, so it just quit. If I had done anything, if I typed a space or put a period or made any changes whatsoever to those documents, it would have stopped me. So anyway, I don't know why, after a year or 2, they went back to checking this, and that's because this is the way computers have always worked. People switching to Macs are expecting it to work where it stops you and asks you to name things. But because I lived through that, I actually kind of like that thing where it's not checked. Now, if you do check it, I don't know why you wouldn't want this second one checked. So let's go back to Pages, and I'm going to open my iCloud document again. Now, I really like where this iCloud document is, but let's just say I make a change here. I'm going to change this to February 2nd. All right. And so I've got this checked now, and if I close the document, it's not just going to assume that I want to save that change. It's going to give me the option of reverting back to the way it was or making the change. So sometimes I'll open a document that maybe I just want to snip a paragraph out of it and put it in another one. And maybe, while I've got it selected, a whole paragraph, let's cancel this for a sec. If I select a whole, let's undo that. I just did Command Z for undo because I didn't want to make that move. But I'm going to triple click this text to select it. Now, if I maybe I wanted to do copy, but maybe after I copied it, I accidentally hit the space bar or something. And so I've got the text copied and I can go paste it where I want, but I've accidentally ruined my document. So when I close this, it's going to ask me if I want to save this in its current condition, and I don't. It's like, oh, I don't think I did anything that I want to save, so I'm going to revert the changes. And the next time I open that document, it's going to be back the way it was originally. So it went back to the previous date, but it also went back and recovered my text for me. All right. This feature right here, this is actually a new computer, so I haven't changed this to the way I like it to be. I like it to be 30. Now what it is, this recent items, most Apple apps have got a menu item. Might as well use Pages again. Under the File menu, there's going to be an Open Recent option. I don't know, since this is a new computer, let me open Keynote because I use that a lot, but it's a new computer and I don't think it's going to have accumulated. on a new computer, it's not going to retain, unless you did a complete migration from an old computer to a new one, it's not going to retain your recents list. So anyway, on the computer I've used for years for the class, I had accumulated more than 10 documents that I've used recently. So when I choose File, Open Recent, it has had a list of 20 or 30 things that I've opened recently. So I'm basically going to have to, let's just open a few things here. We'll go to the Open menu and we'll File, Open, Space Exploration. So now when I come up to File, Open Recent, those 3 documents are in there. This list will continue to grow as I open things. And so I personally like the number of things that are listed in the recent section to be greater than 10. So I've changed mine to 30. I'd have plenty of room for 30 items up there. Okay, this little checkbox right here, allow handoff between this Mac and your iCloud devices. Now I'm going to switch views to my iPad. So this is my iPad, and I'm using the same Apple ID for this iPad that I'm using over on this Mac. Let's go back to the iPad. So this handoff feature is allowing me to start a task on one of my devices. It doesn't have to be an iPad, it can be an iPhone. But anyway, so what I'm going to do on the iPad here is I'm going to start an email. So I'm going to go find my email app. All right, so I'm going to tap email. I'm going to start a new email. And so I'm just going to tap in the body, and I must be in dark mode on this. Actually, let me pull down, and I'm going to switch this over to light mode so you can see it a little bit better. And I'm going to do some dictation. So this is a demonstration of, first of all, dictation on the iPad, comma, and second of all, handoff from my iPad to my Mac, and then back again, period. Touch this to stop. Let me take that last little section out. All right, so where you'll find handoff on the Mac, if the app that you're using on your other device supports handoff, and most of the Mac apps do, let's switch back over to the Mac. And down in the lower part of the dock, in this recently used items, you will see, and this is a change, so if you've taken this class before or you're using an older operating system, this will be at the far left, to the left of the Finder. But they've decided to move this into the dock in the same area that it's been showing up in the iPad. So if I was to click this icon that has the mail icon with a little teeny iPad on it. So my normal mail icon is way over here. It's one unread email. But this one is letting me know that I'm doing something on the iPad that this Mac would be happy to take over. So maybe I was sitting on the couch using the iPad, and now I want to insert a document that I only have on my Mac to attach a document. So what I'm going to do is going to go to the Mac and click the icon, and the Mac is going to go get the email. If I switch back over to the iPad, the email's gone from the iPad. So when I go back to the Mac, I can come up and I could maybe I just wanted to type with a full-size keyboard or something. I could type some things, but I can also come up to the paperclip here and go find perhaps a document that I didn't have on my iPad. So we'll actually do a 2-finger click on that and view that attachment as an icon. So I could do that. Maybe there's a picture that's not in my Photos app, but it's on my Mac here. I could click the little paperclip again. We'll come over to Johnny Appleseed's home folder, That's actually an option that you would get from the Finder preferences under Sidebar. I think the home section is unchecked by default, so I've checked that. Man, all of my pictures. No, there's something right there. All right, I've got a picture there. I'm going to choose that file. I think I'm going to make this image be a little bit smaller in the email. So anyway, I've been working on the Mac now in Mail. And if I switch back over to the iPad, and let's go back to the main screen of the iPad, and you'll notice that in the lower right, there's an icon for Mail with a little Mac on it. So when I tap that, it's actually going to go take the email back. So, and it's got the two attachments that I'd made over there on the Mac. So let's switch back over to the Mac. That is Handoff. And so anyway, that's the end of the general section. So we're going to move on. I'm going to go over here to Desktop and Screensaver to show a couple of things there. This particular section of preferences actually has two panes, P-A-N-E-S. And so there's different options inside of those. The first one here is for changing the picture. The top section of these are what they call dynamic desktops. These are ones that change pictures during the day. So for instance, daytime shots. But here's an example of Catalina in the daytime and Catalina at dusk. So the dynamic version of that will just automatically change from one of those in the daytime, or I think there's more than two. So it'll just change between to the appropriate time of day for those photos. So that's kind of cool. There's actually some that will change depending on whether you have light mode selected or if you've got dark mode selected. So if I come back to general on this particular one and switch over to dark, it gives me a totally different, same picture, but a different version of that picture. So anyway, some interesting stuff. Some of that's new. I haven't actually seen the light and dark desktop before. That's new to Big Sur. So anyway, if you're looking for your own pictures, these are all Apple pictures here. So if you're looking for your own, you can come over to the sidebar here and you can choose photos and you can go to your favorites. And then you can, pick one of your personal favorite photos, or you can just browse through, click on photos and just browse through your 1,300 photos or whatever however many photos you've got. So anyway, you can use your own stuff if you want to. I'm going to go back up and choose the Big Sur one, which is going to be in the Apple section, and there it is right there. All right, before I jump out of that, I want to just show you real quickly the screensaver section. This one, they've got a bunch of screensavers to pick from, and some of them, like this one I'm using right now, this one is called Drift. There's not really any options for this one except for what kind of colors it's going to be using. So if I choose desktop, it's going to kind of pull color from the picture that I've got. Down in the left-hand corner, you can change how quickly it starts, when you don't touch the mouse or the trackpad. So that's an option down here in the lower left. You can actually put a clock on it, and you can make it randomly switch between the different screensavers. There's also this thing called hot corners, which I'm not a big fan of, but I'm going to go ahead and choose the lower right-hand corner to start the screensaver. So instead of waiting for 20 minutes, I'm going to just I'm going to change mine back to 20 because I don't like it starting so fast. But I'm going to take my mouse arrow and put it down in the right-hand corner. And it's going to start that screensaver with the time. I'm going to deliberately wait about 5 seconds and then wake it back up. I thought it was going to ask me for a password. So if you want your screensaver to ask you for a password when it kicks in, that is actually not in this preference. It's over in the security and privacy section. So when you go into security and privacy under general, apparently I got this set to 1 minute. I'm going to set this down to 5 seconds. And that was my Mac. That password I had to type was called my Mac password, which is distinguished from the Apple ID. So anyway, you're going to have 2 very important Apple passwords. One of them is for this device. It's kind of like the code you would type in on your phone, but usually it's a word here. And then the Apple ID password, which your Apple ID is always an email address, and then the password to get into all your Apple stuff. Anyway, under general, you can change this. I'm going to go ahead and kick that screensaver in again and wait 5 seconds. And when I try to get back in, it's not going to let me back in without either typing the password, or many of these new Apple laptops, in fact, all of the new Apple laptops have got Touch ID, which just allows me to come over and put my finger on this little device. And I don't think in the winter time you may have to come in. I'm actually going to go back to System Preferences here and go down to Touch ID, and I'm going to add a fingerprint. So I'm just going to put my finger up here on the little square, and actually we'll use this index finger over here. So I'm just laying it down. I'm not clicking the button. I'm just laying it down. This is also a power button, so you don't want to click it when you're doing the fingerprints. So keep going to capture the edges. And so if you've got one of these newer Mac laptops, unfortunately the other ones don't, the desktops don't have that. But anyway, now when I come and that screensaver kicks in, or if the computer went to sleep, that's another option. There's a setting here inside preferences for how quickly your computer's going to go to sleep. When I wake this back up again, I'm not going to have to type in my password. I can just reach over and touch, or not. I didn't click. I just laid my finger on the little button. So anyway, it's a great little feature. Those of you that have the Apple Watch, let's go back into System Preferences. Over in Security and Privacy, where we were right here, if you've got an Apple Watch, that's going to show up. If you're signed in with the same Apple ID that you're signed in up here with your Apple Watch, then that will show up as a preference right here, and it can let you into your computer, which is nice if you've got one of the iMacs that doesn't have the fingerprint reader. All right, let's go over to Dock in Menubar. Now this is something that if you've taken this class before, this has changed a lot. And the reason for that is this section used to just be called Dock, which of course is this colorful strip at the bottom. And there's some basic options of how big is the dock going to be. Do you want there to be magnification, that when you put your mouse over the dock, do the icons get bigger? So you can choose that if you want. You can put the dock on the left or on the right. You can make the dock hide and show, which you can also do this by doing Command Option D on the keyboard. So I'm not actually clicking that box. I'm doing Command Option D, and it's turning that on and off. So sometimes I want that dock to just go away quickly. So I'll just reach up and do Command Option D, and without opening System Preferences, it'll let me make that go away and then bring it back. But anyway, there's all your options for the dock are down here. The menu bar. Oh, they moved this over here. That's so great, because this option used to be in the general section. And it's nice that it's over here, because that's the top bar. The bar at the top that has the apple, you can make that hide. So it totally makes sense for this to be in the same section as the one that hides the dock. So good move, engineer at Apple that moved that. All right, so the part of this that's really new besides that is this whole section on the side. This is the menu bar. So let's bring the menu bar back. Let's also bring the dock back. This little section up here, there's a whole new thing called the control center. Now, if you've got an Apple iPad or an iPhone, in fact, I'm gonna switch over to the iPad. An iPad, when you put your finger in the upper right, let's just get out of mail for a moment, and you pull down, this is the control center on an iPad, and there's a similar option on the iPhone where you can get a quick access to certain things that you might want to change. And so basically they've added that feature to the Mac with this little button over here, which is to the left of Siri. We've got a little shortcut for Siri here, and then of course our date and time. Which is now bringing out this widgets area and the recent notifications. So they did away with the three little bars that show that. Let's explore this over here. So this is new for me. Wi-Fi, show it in the menu bar. If you don't want to show, that's my different Wi-Fi hotspots. If you don't want to show that up there, you can uncheck that. These are all the different things that could be up in this area. I like Bluetooth to be up there. I like Time Machine to be up there. That's for monitoring my backups. Here's the Siri option. Spotlight is up here. This is for doing quick searches. Is the clock going to be up there? Show the day of the week. Fast user switching. If you've got... ooh, that's interesting. You can put that in the control center. If you've got more than one person using the Mac, you can actually switch between them up here. Here. It's kind of beyond the scope of this class, but there's actually a system preference called Users and Groups where you can add additional users, and all of their stuff can be inside their user. This is something the iPad and the iPhone don't have, but it makes the Mac unique, is that multiple people can share the device without sharing their stuff. So each person can actually be logged into their own Apple ID. So anyway, some new stuff here over on the side, and you get to decide how this thing up at the top is configured, and announce the time. There's a bunch of interesting things here. So again, I'm exploring this for the very first time with Big Sur. And so anyway, let's click the little grid at the top and go back to the big set. Mission control, we've talked about that a little bit. I remember when I clicked the green ball on Pages. Let's go back and just open Pages again, or you know what? I've still got Mail open, I think. Do I have Mail open? Yes, I do. And so I'll go ahead and click the green ball. So what this has done, so I'm sliding over using that three-finger feature on the trackpad, or that's sliding between full screen apps, three-finger slide, or two-finger slide with the mouse. Mission control gives you some additional options. So it actually has an icon that I do not have on my dock. So I'm actually going to go find it. So I'm going to click the launch pad, and I'm going to type in an M for mission, and I see the mission control app. And I'm going to take that and I'm going to drag it down here to the dock. So you can click this. Some of the Apple keyboards actually have an item for this in the keyboard above the number 3. If you have a touch bar, you won't have that. But anyway, when I click this, it's showing me. Looks like it's not doing much because I don't actually have much open. But if I open some additional things here, open my Photos app, and then I click this, it's showing me all the little windows I have open, and up at the top it's showing me the things that are in full screen. So let me go ahead and take Photos and put it in full screen as well. Come down to the dock and click Mission Control, and so I can now switch. And so I'm going to come down here and click it again. You don't actually have to come down to the dock to do this. That's one of the things that you can do. You can actually do this with a keyboard option, or on the trackpad you can use 3 fingers from bottom to top. And so I'm doing that right now with my trackpad. Or you can, again, if you've got the mouse, it's a little bit different on the mouse. Mission control is a very light tap on the mouse with 2 fingers. And it lets you into this feature, and you can then switch to your full screen apps. So instead of sliding, you could just do this tap and maybe switch to one of the windows on the main desktop without having to actually do the whole sliding feature. So anyway, that's a quick look at mission control. When you are in mission control, there's an option to add additional desktops, which don't make a lot of sense to me, but if you don't like full screen, but you want to keep your apps separate, you can put different apps into different desktops and then slide between the different desktops. So kind of interesting. You can also click the little X's. And one other thing, I'm gonna combine. Can I do that? Doesn't look like I can combine these 2 things. But if I get out of full screen for a moment, and we'll bump. There's a couple of ways to do it. You can do it from mission control. I'm going to click the green ball. So I've got photos, and I've got well, that's notes, but I've also got mail open. If I hover over the green ball, instead of, if I just click it once, it goes into full screen. But if I hover over it, I get the option, boy, this is interesting, this is new, to move this window over to the class iPad. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But if I click tile window to the left of the screen, it puts my mail on the left, and then I can choose another app to put on the right of the screen. So now I've got 2 apps that are open at the same time. So, and that can be interesting. So, I don't know what happened to my email that I was composing. Is that still on the iPad? That email is actually still over on my iPad. I'm going to do that little option where I, let's go back to the Mac, and I'm going to pull this email back to the Mac, and we'll put it, let's go get photos out of full screen in this little section right here. And I'm going to go back to the email, hover over the green ball, tile it to the left, and go get my Photos app. And now I can drag additional photos just from one of the apps. Wow, it's not letting me do that. Let's drag a whole bunch of them. Oh, there it goes. Okay, so I just dragged 4 photos right from the Photos app right over into the email. I could have had the Finder over here and dragged files. So anyway, get out of this. So that's mission control. Do my 3-finger slide. If I hover over the whole window, I can get out of both apps at the same time. And there's some cool things you can do. Now's probably a good time to talk about that thing that just showed up a minute ago when it said send window to iPad. Now what's the deal there? So I'm just going to come over to a different view where you can see everything that's going on my 2 machines here. I've got this iPad sitting next to my Mac. And so one of the features that Apple added a couple of years ago is a feature called SideCar. So right now I've actually got this iPad in iPad mode. It's just acting like a normal iPad. But if I open Photos here and hover over that green ball, there it goes, move to class iPad. So let's see what that does. So I clicked it, and what that has just done, let's go back over to this bigger view, it has actually turned my iPad into an extra screen for this Mac. So here's, I think you can see my arrow on the screen. We'll move it over here so you can see it a little better. when I move my arrow over to the right, it crosses over that line. So this is like an extra monitor. So if you need extra space to do something, we'll minimize this for a bit, but what would happen if can I do system preferences that way? If I hover the green ball, they should allow that option. But even though it's not offering to, when I hover over this third ball to move it over, I can click with my mouse and drag and move this item over into this other screen. So anyway, extra space on your iPad, and there are actually some apps that let you do special things like use the Apple Pencil with the iPad to control an app that's on your Mac. So really interesting stuff. If I want to get out of that feature, what just happened was, I'm going to click the grid. Actually, let's move this back over so you can see it a little better. I'm going to switch over to the Mac part. And so where this gets activated besides that green ball is this little section called SideCar. I'm going to disconnect. So that green ball apparently connected the iPad. So you can actually do it from the system preferences and connect your iPad. Another really interesting thing that happens with SideCar, let's open Photos because this is really fascinating. And I'm going to hover over the green ball and I'm going to move it to the class iPad. I'm going to come over and click on a photo. At the bottom of the screen, it actually puts a touch bar there. So if you don't have one of those touch bar Macs, you can actually get a touch bar. I can just touch the little favorite button or whatever. So whatever app you're in, it offers a different little strip there at the bottom of the screen to. So anyway, if you're missing that touch bar feature, you can actually get that by enabling that SideCar feature. So I just had the iPad plugged in to the Mac right here. Although I don't believe you have to do that in order to for that to work. So I think it can be totally wireless. All right, let's get back to the Mac. And I'm going to close a few windows here. We're probably getting close to running out of time. I definitely want to go into one to security and privacy. So let's skip over to that. You'll notice that this one has 4 different tabs. And so you're probably going to be forced to spending some time in here. Anyway, the first one is where we adjusted the time period for when does this Mac require me to type in a password. If for some reason you don't have one that has the fingerprint reader, you can extend the amount of time that it takes to kick in and demand a password, or totally uncheck it and not ask for a password at all. But some of us are using things like the iCloud keychain where we basically have access to all of our passwords on our Mac. So if we don't want somebody to be able to potentially get into that, we want this to be fairly secure. Also, if you're installing an app that came from somewhere besides the App Store, and especially if the person that wrote that app did not apply to be an Apple developer, then you might be required to make some special exceptions to actually install and run that app. And that usually shows up in this general section down here. I've got the selection to automatically allow apps that came from the App Store and from identified Apple developers. But occasionally there's some good little apps that were made by people that aren't identified Apple developers. But you want to be extra sure that if you're doing that, you trust where that app is coming from. And by the way, I can't make any changes to some of these things because it's locked. I would actually have to either reach up and touch my Touch ID, which I just did, and it let me in, or type in the password. So File Vault. I just want to talk about that. This is something that Apple's been fairly aggressive at suggesting File Vault. This does give you an extra layer of security, but it can also slow down your Mac a little bit. If you were to activate this and you were to forget your Apple ID password or the password to your Mac, this is so secure it could keep you from ever recovering your documents. So use this one with caution. If your stuff is super sensitive, you might want to turn it on. If it's not super sensitive, you might want to turn it off. So that can, if it's on, it will say turn on here. If it's not on, it'll let you turn it off. This one right here is something that the bad guys take advantage of. When you bought your Mac, Firewall is turned off by default. And so if you were to get one of those cold calls by the people that are trying to scam you out of money, and you were to find them believable enough to at least go into your computer and let them walk you through things or take control of your computer, one of the places they like to bring people is into this firewall section, and they will say, look, someone has hacked into your computer and turned the firewall off. Well, no, they did not do that because it was off when you bought your computer. They know that. They're just trying to scare you into paying them money to help you secure your computer. For me, the only time I might want to use this firewall is when I'm in public places like a coffee shop or a hotel where there's many other people on the same network. So then I might want to turn this on. My Wi-Fi is actually secure, and so that in itself is a firewall, and so I feel okay not having this turned on. This privacy section here is something that you're going to have to go into once in a while, and so when you install an app of certain kinds of apps, for instance, in order for Zoom to be able to use my camera, I needed to approve. When I first installed Zoom, it says, do you want Zoom to be able to use your microphone or your camera? And so that's to force apps to basically give full disclosure of what things they're trying to access. If you accidentally said, no, I can't use the camera, and then you're using Zoom and you can't get your camera to work, that's because you'll need to come in here and check this box. All these different things are asking for different access, like Zoom. In order to share a file with other people in the Zoom call, you need to let it have access to all of your files. You might want to scroll through there, but certain apps are going to require you to go in here and check a box. All right, last but not least, there's just so much in here. I just did a software update today that took me to Big Sur 11.2, and that had showed up here in the software update section. So anyway, I think that's all I've got for you today. Thank you for joining us, and stay tuned for some of our other Mac classes. Photos, Safari. There's a lot of new stuff in Safari for Big Sur. And then we've got Pages, Numbers, and Keynote, which we call iWork Essentials. And then iMovie. And some of the there's 2 additional classes that are more than just for the Mac, and those are iCloud and iCloud Photos. So stay tuned for those, and I hope we'll see you soon. Have a good day.